Hi, fifth graders. Let's do some more review with rounding. So our first problem, we're going to use 6.385 rounded to the nearest tenth. So take a second to write down our number. And then when you're done, I want you to underline the tenths place. Where is the tenths place? Right there. So remember, when we are drawing our number line, I'm going to take that tenths place and everything that came before it, and that's going to be my low number. If I round down, it'll be to 6 3/10. I'm going to ignore that decimal for a second. Let's just call that 63. What would be one more than 63? That would be 64. Now don't forget the decimal. If I have a decimal in between the two numbers, up top, I need to include that in between the two numbers. All right, some of us, we talked about this in group, the kind of magic trick to figure out what is in between those two numbers. Do you remember what it was? And for people who weren't in groups, let's talk. So we did before that you could add a 0 here to figure out. In fact, I'm going to do it in a different color though, because I'm going to tell you to ignore it at one point. So one strategy to figure out what's in the middle, add a 0 and then figure out what's in between 630 and 640. The other strategy, here's what I like to do. Here's what I'm doing in my head. Is I'm going to ignore that 0, pretend I never wrote it. My original number was 6.3. I'm going to rewrite that exact same number, 6.3. To make it in the middle of these two numbers, all I need to add is a 5. That's like adding a half to it. So what's in between 63 tenths and 64 tenths? 63 and a half. All right, that's my midpoint. If I'm comparing my original number, is that more or less than the midpoint? So far it's the same. It's the same. Here's the only part that's different, besides the fact that there's nothing in the thousands place. But the hundredths is what matters. And I know 8 is more than 5. So do I round up or do I round down? We round up. 6.385 rounded to the nearest tenth is about 6.4, 6 4/10. Let's do another one. I'm going to use that exact same number, and this time let's round to the nearest hundredth. So you want to rewrite our decimal and then underline the hundredths place. The hundredths place, where is that? Did you underline the 8? That would be our hundredths. So on our number line, I'm going to take that hundredths plus everything that came before it, and that becomes our lowest number. Right? Do you remember how to find what we'd round up to? If you do, write it in. All right, if you're stuck, here's my hint. Ignore that decimal. This is 638. What's one more than 638? 639. I have a decimal after the 6, and include a decimal after the 6. All right, take a second, figure out what would your midpoint be. Remember my magic trick. I'm going to take the lower of the two numbers, and now I'm going to add a half. Add a 5, there's my half. So now I'm halfway in between 6 38/100ths and 6 39/100ths. Where is our original number compared to this? Is it more or less than the midpoint? Let's check. The same, decimal's the same, 3 is the same, 8's the same, 5's the same. Oh, wait a second. That is the exact same number. So I would put it right on top of the midpoint. Do you remember if it's right exactly halfway, do we round up or do we round down? We round up. Mathematicians decide if you're halfway, they're more of a glass half full kind of person. So they say, we're pretty close to the top. We round up if we're halfway. All right, last one I want us to solve. 37 decimal 645, excuse me, rounded to the nearest hundredth. So again, write down your decimal, underline your hundredths place. Right there. So on our number line, I'm going to take that number plus everything before it. I'm going to rewrite that here. What would be your top number? What would it be if we round up? So if you're not sure, think of it like 3,764. What would be one more? 3,765. And where does that decimal go? It was 37 decimals. I'm going to keep it 37 decimal. Now figure out what is your midpoint. What's halfway in between those two numbers? So again, my magic trick, I'm taking the lowest number and I'm going to add a half to it. I do that by adding a 5. Where is our number? 3 is the same, 7 is the same, 6 is the same, 4 is the same, 5 is the same. It's the exact same number. So again, do we round up or do we round down? We round up. If we're halfway there, there is no turning back. We go up. Good job, everyone. Almost done. Just your application problem now. Good job.